Welcome to the stream, everyone. I'm back yet again. I was defeated yesterday, but I came back, I figured out my problem, and we're going to go over it. So, what are we going to go over? We're going to go over an end-to-end deployment of a React application. This is a React application that I built um, earlier this year. I don't even remember what was in it, to be honest, but I'll show you an example of what it looks like locally, and it's going to look a little different deployed because the CSS doesn't exactly mesh correctly when it gets deployed, when it gets compiled to what it gets built with Yarn to deploy for a production build. Not 100% sure why, but that's not the focus. The focus is deploying a React application. So full disclosure, totally went through this yesterday. It was like an hour and a half stream. It was gross. And I ran into a very unique issue, which when we get to that point, I'm going to talk about it and explain exactly why this happened and how you can avoid it when you're doing this exact same thing. So let's crack right into this. So first we have here is our React app, right? So nothing too crazy. Let's find app.js. Let me show you what this looks like. So I'm going to do a yarn dev in here. I'm going to go over here, invoke, and go to localhost 3000. So this is what the application looks like. Granted, this CSS is not going to be there when we deploy it. I don't know why. It acts a little funny when it comes to compiling it to actually build it for production. Cool little connect wallet pop up right here. So this is something I built quite a while ago. Not finished, just a front end, nothing crazy, but this will apply to pretty much anything you want to deploy, whether it's a node backend or a front end or both of them together, however you plan on doing it. So I've already got our project set up. So I have another service account. So if you watch my Terraform for Dummies video, you'll see me set up a service account that actually talks to Terraform and understand how to do that. And here we have our Terraform code. So this is, again, this is taken directly from my Terraform for Dummies video. So if you want to know how to set up to actually authenticate Terraform with your Google Cloud project, refer to that video and you'll be good to go in that department. And I'm just going to step through things step by step, right? So the first thing we have to do is we have to create a Docker file, right? So we're going to containerize our React application. So a Docker file looks like this. If you remember my video on Docker and containerization, should look pretty familiar. So let me break down what's happening in this Docker file since I've already gotten it written. Basically what we're doing on this first line here is we are telling the container what environment it's going to build in. So in our case, we're going to build on Node, and that's going to be version 16. We're going to set a work directory called app/app. So that's just where our code is going to live. And then we're going to copy everything in this current directory into the container. That's what the copy command does. And then we're going to run our yarn install. We're going to expose port 8080, which actually I believe it's 3000. So this is wrong. We're going to change that to what it's supposed to be. And then we're going to run our yarn build command, which essentially that just compiles the code so it's ready for production deployment. And then we're going to run our command that actually starts our application, which in our case, since we're using yarn, is going to be yarn start. And that's pretty much it to run your application, right? And that just builds a container, a virtual machine that is then going to get not the machine itself, but the image of that machine is going to get pushed to Google Artifact Registry, which I will show you that process. So another thing I want to note is a Docker ignore. So these are files you want to keep out of the Docker container because they just kind of make it a little bit larger, or the image, you want to keep it out of the image, right? So we want to ignore node modules, your package lock for npm, your yarn lock for yarn, and your git ignore. You probably don't need that in there, but you don't exactly need a git ignore in your Docker container either. So basically this prevents, so when we do this copy step right here, this actually prevents those files that are listed here from getting copied into the container. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want to install our dependencies in the container itself. That way we don't have any misconfigurations between the files, and it always builds a fresh build every single time, right? So with that being said, now that we have the Docker file created, what we're going to do is we're going to run a Docker command that builds an image off of this Docker file, right? And that command, typically that command is going to look like this. It's going to be docker build, and then it's going to be -t usually for a tag, and you're going to give it some random tag name, and then you're going to designate which repository or which the file path to the Docker file. And since we're in the root directory in our file system right now, we're just going to use a dot, right? So it's going to look in this location for a Docker file, and it's going to pick it up from there. However, and this is the issue I ran into yesterday, Google Cloud only recognizes AMD Docker files. So it will only run AMD Docker files. And what does that mean? So I am building this Docker container on an M1 Mac. So this has the new Apple hardware. It has a new Apple chip. It's an M1 Mac. So it builds in a different system architecture than what literally everything else in development works with. So good job on that one, Apple. So instead of running this command the way it is, this is the command we're going to have to run. I'm just going to copy and paste for time's sake so you don't have to sit here and watch me type everything out. So you're going to run this command, docker buildx build, and you're going to give it a flag -- platform. And you're going to specifically designate you're building it for Linux and AMD 64. And then you can tag it normally and show it where the Docker file is, right, with the dot at the end. You have to add this step because if you don't, running your container in Cloud Run is going to fail and say it can't listen on whatever port you designate it, right? So you absolutely have to use that platform flag and designate that it's an AMD 64 Linux container, right? It's very important. And I wanted to bring that up because I ran into that issue yesterday, and it actually turned this exact stream, into like an hour, almost 2 hour stream trying to debug live with me, and it was very boring, I'm sure. So next command we have to run is we have to tag our Docker container. So this is tagging it locally, but this is tagging it specifically for Artifact Registry. So actually, in the link in the description here, I linked this page. This is Google's documentation. Essentially, it tells you how to authenticate your gCloud and your Docker commands with Google so you can actually push to Artifact Registry, right? So it's going to tell you to basically look for this right here, these cred helpers inside your local machine, right? But you're probably not going to have it if you've never done it before. So you're going to be doing this. So let me give you a note on this. When you decide to run this command, make sure you set your region to the region you're going to be deploying this Cloud Run instance to. So if it's US Central 1, put US Central 1. If it's US East 1, put US East 1. And you're just going to run this command, and your Docker command should reflect in Google, right? So like I said, in the description, I have the link to this web page, so you'll be good to go on that aspect. Now, let us take a look at Cloud Run. We don't have anything there right now. What we actually need to take a look at is Artifact Registry. So, full disclosure, this was still from yesterday. So, I'm going to go over what I did in order to get to this point. So, in Artifact Registry, you have to enable the API, of course. You have to create a repository, which you can just do from this selection up here. So you can hit create repository, give it a name, make sure the format is Docker, give it a region, which we're going to do US Central 1, which is what that region is. And then everything else can pretty much be left the same, right? So I've already created that repository, called it DeFi Stake, and you'll see I have 2 images in here. This was the original image that I deployed yesterday, this staking app. This was not built with that Docker command that did the AMD 64 flag, the platform flag. So this is the container that was giving me issues. So I rebuilt another one immediately after the stream, and everything worked correctly. Imagine that, right? So after you tag this, right, back to our tag command. So now Docker is able to recognize which image it's actually going to send to Artifact Registry. So now the only thing you have left to do is you're going to do a Docker push, and you're going to name it the same thing that you tagged it with. And it's going to look like this. It's Docker push, your region, and then your docker.pkg.dev. That's standard for GCP. You're going to give it your project name. You're going to give it your repository name that you just created, that I just showed you how to create. And then you're going to give it your tag name, basically, or whatever you want it to be named inside of Artifact Registry. Typically, I just keep it the same tag name so nothing gets confused, right? So after that's done, it will push a new image to Artifact Registry. It'll push this image right here, right? And that's the latest image we have. Okay. The application section is completely done. So we don't need to do anything more with the React app anymore. So now let's go over to our Terraform, and let me go through Terraform. So like I said, if you look at my Terraform for Dummies video, you'll see that how I created the service account, I downloaded the JSON key and stuff like that. So refer to that video if you're not sure about how to do that. And also your your Terraform init has to be ran, and it creates this .terraform file, which just gives it the providers, and then your Terraform lock, and then your Terraform state, right? So that's our providers file. These get auto-created, so don't worry about these. When you run Terraform init and Terraform plan and apply, don't worry about those right now. So this is where all the work is actually going to be done. This is our cloudrun.tf, just a random name that I assigned it. So naturally, we need a resource for Terraform. It's going to be a Google Cloud Run service, and I just named it DeFi Stake, so it's referenceable in other sections of our code. So that's why the module itself, or the resource itself, needs a name in Terraform, right? And then I'm going to give it a name of the service, what I want it to be called in GCP, and then obviously a region as well. So we're going to have to form it off of a template, and the specification of that is going to be, we're going to point it to our image that we just pushed to Artifact Registry. And let me show you how to do the file path, because sometimes that gets confusing. So if you look up here, you have your US Central 1 docker.package. This is your file path, basically. So you're going to do US Central 1 docker package dev / Terraform Basics 12 / DeFi Stake / the staking app AMD 64. So that's what we have right here. If you want to specify a specific port, so by default, Cloud Run runs on port 8080. I want it to run on port 3000 because that's how my Docker container runs, right? Another thing we want to do is we want to assign traffic to that Cloud Run service, right? So right in this case, we're having it serve 100% of traffic, which means all of the traffic is going to get routed to this revision of this Cloud Run service. So little explanation on that. So with Cloud Run, you can do this really cool thing where you can have 2 different images serving 2 different amounts of traffic, right? So for example, if you're doing a blue to green deployment where you slowly transition your traffic from your previous image to a new image that you just created, you can do that with this flag. So I'll go into like blue to green deployments a little bit later. in another video because that's a whole nother topic by itself. But I think this is a pretty unique tool when it comes to Cloud Run itself. So another thing we have to do is we have to assign a IAM policy for this is actually for the Cloud Run service itself. I know it says Cloud Run role/run invoker, right? But basically what we're doing is we're opening up that Cloud Run service to the entire internet. And that's what this data field is going to do. And then we create a resource Cloud Run service IAM policy, just called it no auth. So we're giving it a location, and these are just to reference our resources that we have in our Terraform code, right? So we're going to reference a Cloud Run service called DeFi service, which is what we called our Cloud Run resource right here. And then we're going to reference the location, the project, and the service name. And you can do that. This is just to avoid like writing all of this stuff, basically so you can variabilize this stuff and use it across multiple files, which if you work in the cloud, you will have way more files than just 3 different files. Good evening, Christian Soto. Welcome to this show. You missed the mess that I made yesterday, but that's okay because we're back on it today. Welcome. So, and here we're giving it a policy data, and essentially we're just giving it what we created here. Again, this is just a way to templatize some of your code so it's a little bit easier to read. And you can use it in multiple places if you have multiple resources you're deploying here, right? Okay, so that pretty much covers all of the Terraform. So all we need to do now is we're going to run our Terraform plan command. And let's see what we're going to create here. So we're going to create 2 resources. It's going to create the Cloud Run service. Here is our name. Here's our region. Here's some of, here's our image. That's important. Here's the port our image is going to run on and the amount of traffic it's going to receive. And obviously, we just explained this IAM policy. So that's going to get applied to the Cloud Run service to make this a public service with a public URL. So we're going to run Terraform apply. And then give it a yes. And then hopefully, if nothing broke from yesterday when I completed this, we should be good to go. And it should create this Cloud Run service, and it should actually be accessible from the internet. Takes a little bit of time. It's not too bad. There we go. So apply complete. So let's go to our Cloud Run service right here. Let's refresh this page. And boom, we have our staking app right here. You can see our region that got applied right here and that this is deployed in, our service name, and allow unauthenticated. So that is what this right here, this whole role, that's what it allowed us to do. So if we go into here, we actually have a public URL right here. So if we look at this public URL, and we open and it actually loads and serves as traffic, boom, we have a staking app. And I understand it looks different than what I showed you locally. But again, that is because the way the CSS is compiled with basically my app is broken. I'm not a very good developer per se. But hey, look, our pop-up still works. So this is an actual public website that anybody can access if they have this URL. And it has an SSL certification already by default. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's cool, but I want to give it my own domain name. Well, lucky for you, Google makes that very easy. So if you manage your custom domains up here in the Cloud Run, you can register a domain. I don't have any domains to register. Otherwise, I would to show you guys how to do it. But basically, you can register a domain. So you're going to have to enable the API. You're going to have to buy a domain. Personally, I like buying from Google domains. It just makes this whole process extremely easy. Like DNS propagation takes maybe 10 minutes. Like it really doesn't take long at all. and then you can add your mapping as well. So you're selecting your service to map to, which is the staking app. Here's a verified domain for a client of mine. I'm not going to use that because that will, override his website, which would not be cool. And this is my own domain right here. And then you can even specify a subdomain. So if I were to continue and update the DNS records, it would actually turn this app's URL, public facing URL, from this into whatever I change it to be. So you can buy a domain for a couple bucks a year, and you can have a personalized website. You can have, for example, christiansoto.com, and it'll be your portfolio website or something like that. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the video and how to deploy a React app. I know I was kind of like burning through this, but if you were part of my video yesterday that I removed, it was kind of a mess. So with that being said, we are good to go. Oh, we gotta clean up our resources, of course, before we go. But as you can see, applications deployed, public URL, all that's jazz. So let's clean up what we did here. Terminal, thank you. So naturally with Terraform, you can destroy all the resources so you don't get charged any amount of money. So to do that, you just run a Terraform destroy. It's going to tell you exactly what it's going to delete. So it's going to delete this IAM permission, and it's going to delete the Cloud Run service itself. I'm going to type yes. And it's going to do it super fast because the API is pretty quick. And you can see our Cloud Run service is now gone. And our resources are cleaned up. So with that being said, guys, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Please check out the link in the description for a lot of the information that I went over today. All of your Docker commands are going to be there. How to authenticate Docker with GCP is going to be there. And obviously my contact information if you have any questions. So please, if you like this video, give it a like. If you want to subscribe for more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to know when it comes out, hit that notification bell, and I'll catch you guys on the next stream.